congestion.
So with all the recent what's it called? Wait, okay. Hey Lucy. So with all of these recent labour shortages in Australia due to like COVID and stuff, what's been a really big issue that's come out of that?
A big policy debate is on.
You're doing really good.
Hi, I'm Lucy, and today we'll be exploring the policy debate on pensioners versus migrants and who would be more beneficial to the economy and population growth in Australia. This case study will explore the current politically divisive issue on the skills shortage and which demographic should take priority in gaining employment. Governments are torn as to whether pensioners or migrants would be more economically viable and beneficial to fill the labour shortage, whilst also encouraging an inclusive and diverse employment sector. This policy debate delves into issues surrounding migration, Australian population structure and growth in recent times. The current skills shortage has been a recurring issue attributed to Australia's complex immigration history sparked by the controversial White Australia policy, the ageing population resulting from the second demographic transition, birth rates and death rates declining, and the exacerbated impacts of the border closures due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Australia is facing the highest number of job vacancies on record, at close to 500,000, and with unemployment at a 50-year low. So, why is there such a significant skills and labour shortage? To answer this question, we have to first take a look at Australia's immigration history. Back in the 19th century, the influx of non-whites to Australia for economic opportunities, such as during the gold rushes, brought along much competition and tension. As a result, many negative attitudes towards the non-whites formed, at which many of them were unwelcomed in society. In 1901, the White Australian policy was introduced to restrict non-Europeans from migrating to Australia in order to secure a white Australia. The nation aimed to build a well-paid, white male-skilled labour force and saw all other people as a threat to their ideology. This included any who were not of a British nationality and even local females. The impact of the policy was seen evidently in the drastic change of Australia's population demographics, whereby in 1947, only 2.7% of the nation was born outside of Australia, Ireland, or the United Kingdom. The negative socio-economic impacts were soon felt, and the government's attempt to promote British migration were to no avail. It was clear that the policy was an impediment to population growth. The White Australian policy was abolished in 1966, and the term multiculturalism was introduced in 1973. Additionally, acts against racial discrimination were put in place in 1975 to increase Australia's population and facilitate socio-economic growth. However, current immigration policies continue to be strict and selective on individuals who are considered a benefit to the country. The next factor we need to consider is Australia's ageing population. An ongoing decline in both fertility and mortality rates in past decades have resulted in an overall aging population, as the population is getting older and fewer babies are being born. This can be attributed to the changing gender roles and norms in society as part of the second demographic transition. With this, there are more older people leaving the workforce at retirement age and fewer younger people entering. As a result, this has raised concerns over the stability of the economy as the population ages. Finally, but most crucially, the impact of COVID-19 has driven our main topic of discussion today of whether we should be filling our job vacancies with migrants or pensioners. COVID-19 has undoubtedly led to a significant decrease in the workforce due to the closure of international borders that limited the entry of migrants to contribute to the workforce and economy. During this time, many businesses struggled to find employees, and some even had to shut operations down. This showed the dependency of the nation's economy on migrants. Being the most vulnerable group of society, pensioners belonging to the older demographic were reluctant to re-enter the workforce and engage in labour participation due to public health concerns. And with this, we raise our main issue. While there are migrants willing to immigrate to gain employment, there is high competition created with locals and strict border controls. On the other hand, there are also pensioners willing to re-enter the workforce, but there are issues over the tax imposed on pensioners if they decide to engage in employment. This has been interpreted as punishment for working and deterred many from re-entering the workforce.
The stakeholders affected by this issue are the federal government, pensioners and migrants.
The federal government has the ability to introduce policies which favors either demographic for the benefit of the country. So, how do migrants add to the economy?
Migrants bring in significant advantages to the economy in terms of labor participation, productivity, and skill. They bring in more demand that would stimulate the economy in terms of the desire to gain employment. Migrants are economically beneficial as they inject money into the economy through the complex and expensive processes implemented to achieve this. There's a positive impact on the workforce and country as a whole, with increasing cultural diversity and increased skills and knowledge. This also promotes international relations and trade, which are integral to economic and population growth.
How do pensioners add to the economy?
Life expectancy is increasing, meaning most of the older demographic are physically and mentally capable of working. This brings in valuable wealth of knowledge and experience, assisting in filling gaps associated with labor and skill shortages. Their participation would also reduce the dependency burdens, and less government subsidies would be required for the pensioners. Pensioners also hold over half of the country's national assets, and therefore, if they were to be employed, this would reduce the need for financial assistance by governmental and larger institutions to that demographic. More than just the migrants and pensioners, the government and the rest of the economy have a stake in this too. Migrants bring in a lot of money for the economy overall, as they work and contribute to the economy, not only in terms of their income and employment, but also with how they choose to spend their money in the economy and the demand they create. Moreover, they also pay taxes, which increases the government revenue. And with the taxes they pay, they still get relatively very little benefits compared to citizens in terms of the government subsidies. This way, they bring in more revenue and require less expenditure on them. They've also got increased education fees for universities, and this can be up to 3 to 4 times higher than the domestic fees. This helps the universities as well with increased profit. Essentially, the rest of the economy will also benefit from the economic stimulus brought in by overseas migrants. The age stratification and life course theory talk about the difference between social age and biological age. Is age just a number? There are several social roles and expectations that are distributed through the age categories. Retirement, for instance, is one of them. In Australia, with the retirement age at 66, people are expected to stop working even if they're fit and have the desire to do so. Some may be really active and want to continue working, while others may even want to stop working earlier. This arises the difference between their social age and their biological age. The longevity demand refers to the seniors or older population who still wish to remain in the workforce past their retirement age. They often have unpaid economic contributions and may even be self-sufficient to their superannuation. Nonetheless, immigrants offset the dependency burden of any economic impact of an aging population. There are some arguments that explore the idea of a patchwork quilt metaphor. This metaphor talks about how cultural diversity, like a quilt, brings out beauty to the society and the culture. The patchwork quilt metaphor talks about how different ethnic groups may live separate and parallel lives. This may even result from a combination of a society that doesn't support their cultural needs and for comfort within their own people. Should the migrants who come in to fill the labor shortages be expected to adopt Australian cultures?
Next, we will be going further to examine the various policy and demographic responses to the issue. The Albanese government have recognised the integral role that both migrants and pensioners play in the economy and the potential contribution they would bring in filling up the high number of job vacancies. First, there have been proposals to increase the migration cap from the current cap of 160,000 per year to 200,000 per year. This will not only facilitate population growth, but also economic growth, as productive capacity would be set to increase with a higher number of workers. A recent survey from National Seniors Australia found that 20% of pensioners would consider re-entering paid work, in addition to the current 16% who already have. This implies that an additional 510,000 pensioners could join the workforce if the onerous tax and paperwork requirements were eliminated. In response, Proposed policies have aimed to alleviate pensioners' concerns over their finances should they continue to work. An introduced policy of increasing work bonuses allows up to $790 to be earned per fortnight from the current threshold of $490. This aims to allow pensioners and veterans with limited savings to earn more work income without their pension being affected. With this, let us dive deeper to take a look at two important factors that have driven these responses. First, the Liberal paradox, and second, the September 2022 Job Summit. The Liberal paradox is a phenomenon that poses the idea of transnational forces being necessary to drive economic growth, with the paradoxical perspective adopted by nations remaining concerned about the social democratic context of their country. Therefore, political forces bind them together to form cultural cohesion within the community. This phenomenon stems from the idea of comparing immigrant policy with immigration policy and provides a framework for current policy responses, the need for the job summit, and the current demand for employees. The immigration policy governs and shapes processes of admitting migrants into the country and the conditions of their stay. This is shaped by economic and legal forces, the demand for labour, and the need to fill labour shortages to drive economic growth through admitting entry for migrants, which is drafted and implemented by the political sphere. There are two basic immigration programs: the temporary program, which is uncapped, and the permanent program, which is capped. On the other hand, the immigrant policy is largely driven by democratic and national identity forces, shaping and governing the rights and conditions afforded to migrants upon entry into the country, as well as providing potential pathways to citizenship. The Liberal paradox is of significant importance as it places more emphasis on what and who the government perceives to be more beneficial to the economy. More social, economic, and political support is necessary to assist migrants in establishing themselves within the Australian community and workforce to promote a more healthy, inclusive, and diverse community with culturally safe pathways to employment. The Liberal paradox is a factor that contributed to the need to hold the recent Job Summit in September 2022. This brought Australians together to work on challenges and opportunities faced by the Australian labour market and revealed the need for immediate action to take place in order to build a better, bigger, and more productive and well-trained workforce. The need to deliver jobs with growing wages and improved standards of living, with the need for future action, was also revealed through the discussions that took place. These issues are at the fore of the government's economic agenda rather than their social agenda. This places emphasis on the government's desire to boost economic growth rather than the focus on the social-political atmosphere of the country. The Job Summit revealed a number of potential benefits for migrants, including increasing the permanent cap, increasing duration of work and study, providing an additional $36 million funding for visa processing, among more. However, there appears to be limited benefits for pensioners rising from this summit, with the exception of the current introduced policy reform to reduce taxes on pensioners for engaging in labour participation past retirement age. The Job Summit placed heavy emphasis on the need for economic growth. Australia is benefiting from a strong economy and young skilled labour being an important factor to achieve this, rather than promoting and considering inclusivity and social cultural factors. Therefore, the question is posed on whether Australia's current policy reforms are valid, considering the social cultural environment and their attempts to create a safer and diverse workplaces, or whether the main concern is economic recovery and growth in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic.
So, with all that being said, what do we think? Pensioners or migrants? This debate has been shaped by numerous contextual issues stemming from complex immigration laws to new and emerging societal roles and norms, to the sudden onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is evident that the government is largely driven by shaping economic recovery and boosting the nation's economy in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, rather than focusing on promoting inclusive and diverse workplaces which welcome both demographics. This creates a dichotomy of principles relating to socio-cultural, socio-political, economic priorities within the current Australian society, rendering this issue one of controversy. Current policy responses take the form of increasing the permanent migration cap to permit a larger proportion of migrants entering Australia and considering reducing imposed taxes on pensioners wishing to re-enter the workforce post-retirement age.
So what does the future hold?
Let's find out.